My life was a dance, every step a calculated move of joy and freedom. But then, the music stopped. My strength, my air, it was all gone. And I found myself in a sterile world, where the silence was interrupted only by the beeping of machines. It was there that I met him, the doctor with cold eyes and gentle hands. He healed me, but without my knowing, I healed him too. Our love wasn't planned, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was born in pain, and it bloomed where hope seemed to have died. This is our story. My life was a choreography of perfection. At 25, I was one of the most promising dancers in Seoul. My routine was a symphony of movement. Morning rehearsals, classes with children in the afternoon, and at night, the stage. I lived and breathed the art of dance. My body was my temple, my expression. I understood it, and it understood me. And the future. The future was a blank canvas, ready to be filled with the rhythm of my life. I had an important audition for a renowned ballet company, and all my days were dedicated to that goal. I was the very definition of youth, energy, and vitality. The first signs were so subtle that I ignored them. A slight dizziness after a particularly intense rehearsal. A fatigue that persisted even after a full night's sleep. I attributed everything to overwork. "Hannah, you're pushing yourself too hard," my mother would say on the phone. "Get some rest." But how could I rest? The audition was coming up, and the competition was fierce. I couldn't afford to stop. My life was a fast-flowing river, and stopping was not an option. The symptom worsened. The dizziness turned into a constant nausea. The fatigue into an exhaustion that dragged me to bed as soon as I got home. My skin, always radiant, started to turn pale. My friends noticed. "Hannah, you don't look well," they would say, the concern in their voices. But I would smile and wave as if everything was under control. I was the person who was always in control. I was the dancer who never missed a step. The moment of my collapse was dramatic, almost like a movie scene. I was in the middle of a rehearsal, the music pulsating in the studio. My arms were raised in a graceful movement. Suddenly, a sharp pain, like an electric shock, shot through my abdomen. The entire studio started to spin. My legs, which had always been strong and firm, gave way. I fell to the floor, the music stopping abruptly. My last memory before everything went black was my teacher's voice yelling my name, the confusion and panic on his face. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the smell of antiseptic. The second, the constant irritating beep of a machine next to me. I looked around. The white walls, the privacy curtain, the uncomfortable bed. I was in a hospital. Panic invaded me. Why was I here? What had happened? I tried to get up, but a pain made me fall back. It was at that moment that a man entered the room. He was tall, with an impeccable white coat. His thin-rimmed glasses hid what seemed to be deep, dark eyes. The expression on his face was cold and professional. "You're awake," he said, his voice calm and emotionless. "I'm Dr. Min-jun. You had a collapse. We need to do more tests." He didn't smile. He didn't show empathy. He just said what needed to be said. I, who was used to smiles and gestures of support, felt like a patient, a number on a medical chart. His coldness was a brutal contrast to my world of warmth and emotion. I felt a pang of anger. Why didn't he care? Why was he so distant? He was the personification of the place I was in. Sterile, clinical, and lifeless. He started reading a medical chart, his attention fully focused on the papers. And I, who had always been the center of attention, felt completely invisible. That was my first meeting with the man who would become my world, and I hated him. The physical pain was unbearable, but Dr. Min-jun's diagnosis was even more painful. He entered my room the next morning, holding a clipboard. The coldness in his voice prepared me for the worst. "Your tests showed a rare inflammatory condition," he began, using medical terms I could barely understand. "This caused internal bleeding and can affect your immune system and your ability to absorb nutrients. You will need intensive treatment and a prolonged period of hospitalization." He spoke as if he were reciting a medical textbook. His eyes didn't meet mine, focused on his clipboard. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Does it mean my dancing is over?" The question choked me. He finally looked up. "We will treat the condition. The rest," he shrugged, "depends on how your body reacts. Now let's start the medication. My team will be here soon to administer the intravenous drip." And with that, he left the room. I stayed there, in the middle of the sterile room, with the news that my life, as I knew it, was over. The anger turned into a desperate sadness. My body, which I had cultivated and cared for so lovingly, was betraying me. The tears came, silent at first, and then in an uncontrollable wave. I felt like a boat adrift, without sails, without a destination. My world of stage and music dissolved into a world of white walls and beeping machines. I felt lonely, even with my parents coming to visit. They tried to cheer me up, but I could see the fear in their eyes. The helplessness they felt made me feel even more isolated. They couldn't cure me. Not even the doctor with cold eyes seemed to have a clear answer. Time in the hospital dragged on, a series of gray, identical days. The tests were repeated, needles were inserted into my arms, and the doses of medication seemed endless. Dr. Minjun visited me every day, but his presence was more like a formality than a gesture of care. He asked technical questions about my pain, my fever, my nausea. I answered in monosyllables, unable to look at him. I blamed him. I blamed him for being the face of my pain, the person who gave me the news that shattered my world. He was the personification of my powerlessness. One afternoon, the nurse took me to the occupational therapy room. I tried to do some dance movements. I knew it was foolish, but dancing was my way of feeling alive. But my body, weak and sore, didn't respond. My legs gave way again and I fell to my knees on the floor. The physical pain was nothing compared to the pain in my heart. My identity was being stolen from me. The dancer I was, the person I strived to be, was fading. I cried, not caring if the nurse saw me. I cried for all the dreams I had, for all the auditions, for all the performances I wouldn't have. And it was at that moment that I heard a voice behind me. "You can't force yourself," said Dr. Minjun, his voice softer than I remembered. He was there, standing in the doorway, watching. I stared at him with anger. "Don't tell me what I can and can't do," I said, my voice full of resentment. He didn't answer, just knelt down in front of me. "The pain you feel is real," he said, his voice calm. "But healing is a process. You need to give your body time, and your soul." And with that, he extended his hand to help me up. I hesitated, but his touch was gentle. I realized that beneath his cold mask, there was a human being, and for the first time, I felt a little less alone. That small moment in the physical therapy room was the turning point. From that day on, Dr. Minjun's coldness began to crack, revealing small fissures of humanity. He didn't change his professional attitude, but his subtle gestures spoke more than any words. He started visiting me more often, not just to check my vital signs, but to ask me how I was feeling, not as a patient, but as a person. He asked me about my life, about what I liked to do. He listened to me carefully. I, who was used to talking about dance with passion, started to feel comfortable talking about other things. One afternoon, he found me reading a book about art. He stopped at the door and asked me about the book. "It's a biography of an artist who fought a chronic illness and continued to create," I said, my voice a little softer than usual. He found a new way to express himself. Dr. Minjun was silent for a moment and then said, "Art has many forms. It doesn't always have to be done with your hands or your body." And it was the first time I saw him smile. It was a small, almost imperceptible smile, but it reached his eyes. They, which I thought were cold and deep, suddenly shone with a warmth that surprised me. That smile was a shock. It made me want to know more about him. I started asking questions. "Why did you want to be a doctor? Do you have any hobbies? Why do you seem so serious all the time?" He answered cautiously at first, but with each answer I felt he was opening up a little more. He told me he grew up in a humble family, and that medicine was his way of giving back the help his grandmother received when she was sick. He told me about the hours of study, about working shifts, and about the joy of saving lives. His passion for medicine was the same as mine for dance. Our relationship evolved in an unexpected way. One night, I couldn't sleep. The pain was consuming me, and the loneliness of the hospital was overwhelming. He entered the room, doing his night rounds. I was awake, looking at the window. He saw me, and without saying anything, he sat down in a chair near my bed. He was silent for a long time, and then he gave me a glass of water. "Sometimes, silence is the best form of company," he said, his voice gentle. "You're not alone." I felt touched. He didn't give me medical advice. He didn't tell me to be strong. He just stayed with me. And it was at that moment that I realized that his coldness was just a mask, armor he wore to deal with the pain of others. Underneath, he was the kindest man I had ever known. Our conversations became deeper. He told me about his difficult days, about the lives he couldn't save, and I, in turn, opened up about my pain, about the fear of losing my identity. He listened to me with infinite patience, and in the middle of my fear and my pain, I started to fall in love with him, not with Dr. Minjun, but with the man under the white coat, the one who had eyes full of compassion and a heart that cared. And for the first time, my future, which was once a blank canvas, began to have a color, the color of hope. Minjun's initial coldness completely melted, and our relationship deepened. He was no longer just my doctor, but my confidant and my safe haven. The hours he spent in my room, before his rounds, became the highlight of my day. He brought me small gifts, like a simple bouquet of flowers, picked from his own garden, or an art book he found interesting. And I, in turn, began to feel stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. His presence was like a painkiller, and every day I felt more alive. Our conversations became lighter. We laughed at small things like the gossipy nurses or the cheesy jokes he would tell to make me laugh. I started to see the side of him that few saw. He was funny, sarcastic, and had a smile that could light up the darkest hospital corridor. One night he told me about his hobby, playing the piano. "I play to relax," he said, his eyes sparkling. "Music helps me turn off my mind after a difficult day." I, a dancer, felt connected to him through our passion for art. It was as if our souls were communicating through music and movement. I started to worry about him. I saw the dark circles under his eyes. the tiredness in his voice. He worked tirelessly, and I caught myself begging him to rest. "You need to take care of yourself, Minjun," I said, my voice full of concern. He just smiled and said, "I'm fine, Hana. Seeing you recover gives me the energy I need." His words touched me deeply. I, who was feeling like a burden, was becoming a source of strength for him. Our friendship was my anchor in the middle of the storm. My body was weak, but my soul was getting stronger. He encouraged me to do small physical therapy exercises, to eat well, to have hope. He was my guide, my mentor, my friend. One afternoon, he brought me an anatomy book. "Learn about your body," he said. "The more you understand it, the more you love it." He helped me understand my condition in a way no one ever had. He taught me about patience, about resilience. I felt happy even in the middle of the hospital. Happiness was not the absence of pain, but the presence of Minjun in my life. I knew that what we felt for each other was more than friendship. It was a love that blossomed in the darkness, in the middle of white walls and needles. I felt fortunate. I had a new chance to live, and I was living for him. Our friendship became the foundation for something much bigger. It was a love that was not based on beauty or status, but on vulnerability and support. And for the first time, I didn't care what the future held for us. What mattered was the present. The present was Minjun. Our bubble of happiness in the hospital was suddenly punctured by reality. My ex-boyfriend, Jae Hyun, appeared in my room. He was a businessman, the kind of man my family always approved of. He visited me, but I always felt he was more worried about my reputation than my health. He looked at me condescendingly. "Yumi, you know you don't have to worry about anything," he said, his voice full of arrogance. "I can take care of you. We can go abroad for your treatment." His words irritated me. I wasn't a project for him. I was a person. And to my horror, he saw Minjun entering the room. Jae Hyun's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" he asked, his voice full of suspicion. "He's my doctor," I said, my voice firm. Jae Hyun looked him up and down. "A doctor? You know it's unethical for a doctor to get involved with a patient." Jae Hyun's coldness and condescending tone gave me a wave of anger. Minjun, in turn, remained calm and professional. "I am the doctor responsible for Ms. Park," he said, his voice low. "And my only goal is to ensure she recovers. Now please excuse me. I have to check her vital signs." Jae Hyun left, but I could feel his anger. He didn't give up. He called my father and started spreading rumors about Minjun. "He's taking advantage of your vulnerable daughter," he told my father, distorting the truth. My father, always worried about the family's image, called me, furious. "What's going on, Hana? A doctor? You know this is unethical and can tarnish our family's reputation." I tried to explain, but he didn't listen to me. I felt like I was in a dead end. I had to fight for Minjun. I had to fight for our love. To make things worse, the head of the hospital, Dr. Kim, called Minjun for a meeting. "Minjun, I've heard rumors about your relationship with Ms. Park," he said, his voice full of threat. "You are one of our best doctors. Don't tarnish your reputation because of a patient. You know the rules." Minjun, with his usual calm, replied, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just taking care of my patient." But Dr. Kim wasn't convinced. "Be careful, Minjun. A doctor's reputation is his greatest wealth. Don't lose it for a whim." I felt guilty. Minjun was going through all this because of me. I had to do something. I got dressed, and with the help of a nurse, I went to Dr. Kim's office. I knocked on the door and entered. "Dr. Kim," I said, my voice trembling but firm, "I'm Ms. Park, and I want you to know that Dr. Minjun has been my greatest support. He is a professional doctor, and my relationship with him is strictly friendship. He's not doing anything wrong, and if you try to tarnish his name, I will do whatever it takes to defend him." My declaration was final. I left the office, leaving him in silence. I knew my words would be enough to protect him for now. And at that moment, I realized how strong my love for him was. My condition worsened. The fever rose and the pain became unbearable. I was in a hospital bed, feeling like a cornered animal. My faith and my hope were draining away. I was scared. The fear of death, the fear of never being able to dance again. I felt weak, and my strength, which I was so proud of, was leaving me. I saw the doctors running around me, Minjun's voice sounding distant. He was there, but I felt like I was in a dark, bottomless pit. Suddenly, I felt a hand on mine, Minjun's hand. He held it tightly. "Hana, listen to me," he said, his voice firm and full of urgency. "I can't lose you. I can't." I looked at him. His eyes were full of tears. His cold mask had completely fallen. He was no longer the doctor. He was the man. "I love you, Hana," he whispered, his voice broken. "I love you. You're the only person who makes me feel alive. You taught me to love again. Don't leave me. Fight. Fight for me." His declaration hit me with the force of a punch. I felt like I was in a dream, his voice echoing in my head. His love gave me the strength I needed. His love gave me a reason to fight. I wasn't fighting for me. I was fighting for him. I recovered slowly, but his confession changed everything. When I finally woke up, he was there, sitting next to me, his head down. "I'm so sorry, Hana," he said, his voice full of regret. "I shouldn't have said that. I broke the rules. I'm your doctor. I can't do this." I held his hand. "Minjun, I said, my voice still weak. Don't regret it. You saved me. Not just my life, but my soul. I'm no longer your patient. I'm the woman who loves you. And you're my love. My declaration was final. There were no more barriers between us. We kissed. For the first time, and the kiss was the promise of a future. The following days were a mixture of joy and uncertainty. My health was improving, but the reality of our relationship was hitting us. My family, who were still worried about my health, did not approve of our relationship. My father called me, furious. Hannah, you're not thinking straight. He's your doctor. Your reputation, our families, everything will be tarnished. I tried to argue, but he was inflexible. You must stay away from him. I felt like I was in a dead end. I didn't want to lose my family, but I couldn't live without Minjun. To make things worse, Dr. Kim, the head of the hospital, called him again. Minjun, Ms. Park has been discharged. Your case is closed, but if I hear anything else, I'll fire you. You know the rules. Your future in medicine is at stake. Minjun, with his usual calm, replied, Dr. Kim, I know my responsibilities, but Ms. Park is my life. I won't give up on her. His courage inspired me. He was willing to give up everything for me. My recovery was a slow process. I had to learn to walk again, to eat properly, to get used to my new life, but Minjun was there, every step of the way. He taught me to be patient, to be gentle with myself. He taught me that my body, which I was so proud of, was not my identity. My soul, my passion, my love for him, that was my identity. I, who had always been a dancer, was now learning to live and to love in a way I had never imagined. My life was like a choreography, and I was learning to dance my own dance, with my own rules, with my own movements. And by my side was my partner, the man who taught me to fly. My recovery continued, but life outside the hospital was a new challenge. Minjun resigned from the hospital to the fury of Dr. Kim and the shock of his colleagues. He told me he didn't care about the consequences, that our happiness was his priority. We moved into a small apartment, and life together was a challenge, but also a blessing. I was learning to cook, he was learning to dance, and we were learning to live together. Our life was simple, but full of love and joy. My family, however, didn't give up. My father visited me and his voice was full of sadness. Hannah, why did you do this? You threw away your future, your success, everything because of this man. I felt like I was in a dead end. I didn't want to lose my family, but I couldn't live without Minjun. I looked at him, and he gave me a look of encouragement. Dad, I didn't throw anything away, I said, my voice firm and full of love. I found my future, and my future is Minjun. I'm happy, Dad, and I don't want to go back to the life I had before. My father was silent for a moment and then said, Are you happy? Really? I nodded, and the tears came. Yes, Dad, really. He hugged me, and I knew he was beginning to accept our decision. Our happiness was our greatest weapon, and our weapon was working. Minjun, in turn, was helping me find a new way to express myself through dance. He took me to a physical therapy studio where I could continue to dance, but with the help of a physical therapist. I was dancing, but in a different way. I was dancing my story, my journey, my struggle. Dance, which was once a performance, became a form of therapy. And, by my side, was Minjun, my dance and life partner. Months passed, and our life became a routine of love and joy. Minjun was working at a new hospital, where he was respected for his dedication. I, in turn, was teaching dance classes to children with chronic illnesses. My life, which was once a choreography of perfection, became a work of art, and at its center was my love for Minjun. One night, he took me to a special place. It was a park, with a lake and a view of the city. The place was beautiful, but what he had to say was even more beautiful. Hannah, I need to tell you something, he said, his voice soft. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. He took a small box out of his pocket. It wasn't an expensive ring, but it was the most precious thing in the world. It was a silver ring with a small sculpted cherry blossom. This flower symbolizes resilience. You taught me to be resilient. I can't live without you, Hannah. You are my cure. You are my reason for living. You taught me to love, to be kind, to have hope. You saved me, and I want to spend the rest of my life loving you. Will you marry me? The tears came, and I nodded. Yes, Minjun. 1,000 times yes. We kissed, and the kiss was the promise of a future that was uncertain, but that was ours. Our life together was proof that true love has no price, no barriers. Our story, which began in pain, became a source of hope for many. My father, who initially opposed, became a friend of Minjun, and my mother, a confidant. My brothers, who initially judged me, supported me in every moment. My life was no longer a role to be played. It was a story to be lived. I was no longer the perfect dancer. I was Hannah, and my greatest happiness was to live my life beside the man who taught me to fly. Our life was a fairy tale, with its own challenges, but with a love that was unbreakable. I, the woman who had everything, found my greatest wealth in a man who had nothing, and that was my story. The story of how my heart, once empty, found its home in a place I never imagined. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel for a new episode every day. We'll be waiting for you. See you in the next story.